The Sun Exchange is a great real-world physical application of the kinds of things blockchain technology can do. They allow you to buy solar cells, then lease them to businesses and communities in developing nations. Abraham Cambridge explains more about how this all works. So first of all, I mean, we can get into the blockchain and the cryptocurrency aspects, but tell us just overall what the Sun Exchange is, what the goals of the company are.
Okay, so my background's in solar energy. I'm actually from the UK, and in the UK there's a lot of government subsidies to facilitate the uptake of solar energy. The hardware is quite expensive, and it typically takes a lot of political willpower to encourage people to go solar in Europe. But then when policies change, and then when the tide goes out, you can see that actually most of the markets in the UK in Europe are artificial, because it's propped up by subsidy. So I looked out the window and realized there's a whole world out there, and I realized that South Africa is a very sunny country, and it's the hub of Africa, really. I mean, it's the gateway to Africa, you might consider it. And actually, Africa has got 650 million people with no electricity at all, let alone good electricity. Like, there are no electricity for most of the population. It's a population of 1 billion. And then when you look at how sunny African countries are, it's obvious that solar energy is the technology that's going to enable Africa to become electrified. On the other side, you've got the financial world, and a lot of people in Africa are unbanked. They don't have bank accounts. They're using mobile money like M-Pesa, SMS-based finance systems. They kind of skipped banks, but as a result, you've got unbanked customers. And also there's this concern of corruption in Africa. So it's not uncommon for large development programs like building dams and thermal power stations for money just to go walkabout. And people don't know where it's going. It's basically that corruption is rife in a lot of places in Africa. So I moved out here, and I figured out that actually the problem is lack of access to funding. So the reason why businesses and homes and communities in Africa don't have solar energy yet is because there's no access to finance. Banks aren't lending to these kind of projects. They're capital intensive. The markets are very immature. And I basically proposed on Indiegogo in November 2015. I said, right, let's set up a crowdfunding platform for people all around the world to be able to buy solar assets in Africa, own them, and earn income from them, where the underlying technology is Bitcoin. Because, as we all know, Bitcoin is a universal currency. We only need to use one currency to interact with the entire world. And that would be a good basis for getting payments into and out of Africa in a way that's cheap, secure, transparent, and also we can automate it by setting up smart contracts. So what we've now done is we have an Ethereum smart contract which communicates to the smart meters on our solar plant. And each time a kilowatt hour of electricity is consumed on the solar plant, it basically sends digital currency to the wallets of the owners. So this is where we're going. This is what we have actually got now is 3 operating solar plants. We're powering a school, a tire recycling factory, and a wildlife rehabilitation center. Those were our first 3 projects. They're owned by about 250 worldwide. The majority of the capital that paid for those solar plants came from Bitcoin. And the thing that I find most sort of magic about this, and if you really think about this, right, Bitcoin and all digital currencies is money that was created on a silicon chip that was powered by electricity. And now that value is now being converted into a silicon chip that produces electricity that's then sold for money. So I see this is actually the start of an entirely new economy. This is a silicon-based economy. There's no moving parts. It's passive, it's clean, it's solid state, and it's totally decentralized. So that's what the Sun Exchange is now doing, is we're kind of facilitating the transition to a silicon-based economy for Africa. But it's not just Africa, because the whole world is able to interact with this system. Because if you own Bitcoin, you can now own solar panels in Africa and earn a passive income stream paid to you in Bitcoin from your solar panels, which just happen to be located in Africa, where it's the best place for them on Earth. So Africa is the world's solar power station.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. There's a couple things I want to follow up with. You mentioned the smart contract. So basically the structure is
I send money, or I send money to help buy a solar panel that is then leased out to a third party, and I get a share of that lease amount. Is that correct?
It's actually a bit more, even more direct than that. You go onto the Sun Exchange portal and you select a solar project in which you want to own solar panels. So you buy a number of solar cells. We've broken it down to a cell level, like a solar panel this big is actually made up of cells this big. There's 60 of them typically per solar panel. So you can buy any number of solar cells you wish for a particular project, as many as there are available. You buy them, they're around the equivalent of $6 each, or whatever the equivalent is in Bitcoin at the time. And you then are able to lease that solar cell, and you get paid by every kilowatt hour of electricity that solar cell produces. You get paid that according to the lease terms, and those lease terms are available for you to review when you buy that solar cell. So essentially, when you buy a cell, you know with a good probability what income you're going to generate from that over a 20-year period, because solar energy is actually quite predictable. We know how much electricity we'll actually produce. So what you're actually buying when you buy a solar cell is rights to a 20-year income stream, which is equivalent to about a 10% internal rate of return. If you want to look at it in terms of if in an investment product, this isn't actually an investment product. This is an actual asset that you're buying. It's real, and you're just leasing it out. So the Sun Exchange is like a lease agent, but it's actually your solar cell. You own it. You know its serial number. You know its location. You know its yield. You know its history. You know which manufacturer it is, and it's got your name on it. And you can actually sell your solar cell to somebody else in a secondary marketplace. And that's what we're now building right now, is a secondary marketplace of these, where each solar cell is represented by a digital token, and that digital token is on a blockchain, and is a smart contract representing each token.
Okay, interesting. So yeah, that was one thing I was going to ask if you're looking to tokenize any of this, but it sounds like that's on the roadmap. What is?
Yeah. Well, what we're doing is we're up to now. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop you. I was just going to embellish on it a little. So up till now, we've been pre-funding solar projects. So people are buying solar cells as pre-orders, and then once we've collected enough pre-orders, then the solar plant gets constructed. But what we actually want, and then once it's constructed, we then represent the solar product onto a blockchain smart contract. That's what the current plan has been into now. But what we're now planning is an ICO type structure, where the ICO doesn't stand for initial coin offering; it's an initial cell offering. So, but the difference being that we've got basically a predetermined token, but it's not a speculative token. It's a token that once you hold it and you bear it, it's yielding you a 10% income based on real world money rather than digital currency. The digital currency is just a payment mechanism with which you then receive your income. But it's up to you whether to convert it back to real money or not. But most of our customers like to keep it in Bitcoin because they're better off doing that.
Yeah, that's great. So this is all starting to come together for me when I heard that you had a background in Indiegogo. So one thing I thought was really interesting about what you're doing is the crowd sales. So you're actually going out there, finding a client to lease the solar cells, and then raising the money for the solar cell before any of the hardware is purchased. Is that correct?
Yeah, and actually it's actually easier for us than that, because we work with solar developers and solar installation companies that operate throughout Africa, and we've already pre-vetted them. I mean, actually, we're a solar engineering company as well as a marketing company. I mean, we've got 3 solar engineers on the team. So when solar installation companies bring us projects, we can actually vet them and we validate them technically. So when we host a solar project, our customers know that it's been checked over. We know what the energy yields are. We know that the off-taker, the electricity consumer, is reliable. We know that the equipment being supplied is good quality. That's what we do. Projects get brought to us. We open the box, look at it, and if we're happy, we then host it on our platform, inviting people around the world to buy solar panels in there.
Great. So there are 3 that you've currently done. Is that correct? 3 different projects?
Yeah, so we've got the projects that we tried to focus on the small to medium-sized commercial projects. Anything larger than, say, $1 million a project, those typically could be funded through conventional mechanisms, because that banks start getting interested when you're talking many zeros. But it's actually, the project's less than $1 million. That's actually the bulk of the solar plants in the world are smaller than a megawatt, which is the equivalent of $1 million. So typically our project's around 50 kilowatts, around $60,000. So we've got around $250,000 of projects currently operating. The typical purchase per customer is around $800 to $1,000 per purchase. So they're purchasing maybe about 100 solar cells per project typically.
What's the least amount someone could put in to actually get a share?
One single solar cell.
Okay.
You could buy a single solar cell, it costs $6. And a lot of people do that. They kind of tentatively buy a single one and then find out it is actually working, and then think, well, there's no point just buying one at a time. Let's buy a bulk of them. But the beauty of doing it in the crowdfunding type structure is that we've got multiple projects available for people to back. So you can actually spread your ownership over multiple projects. And people often ask us, is it guaranteed? And well, actually, no, it's not. Your risk is entirely up to the fact that this electricity consumer is going to be buying electricity from you for 20 years. But the consumers typically are very established schools, very established factories with purpose-built facilities. So we've got a very good understanding of, actually, this is a very long-lasting project. This is not a home where someone can move out after a year and leave their lease. No, these are very long-standing projects. But at the end of the day, there is a risk that a project may default. And we make no secret of that. We're very open about it. But actually, by doing it in this crowdfunding type mechanism, you can spread your solar cell ownership over multiple projects and thereby mitigate your exposure to a single project failing, which is a big difference between what we do and some other solar finance companies. Because most companies take a whole tranche of projects, put them into one pot, and then ask people to put money into this pot. But actually, you don't know what your money, which project you're actually backing, and there may be projects in there you don't want to be backing. And then you're at risk of one project failing. So we think and actually this is we're democratic. If a project typically bankable, like the kind of project if I took to a bank, they'd laugh me out the door, such as a rural electrification project. So at the moment, what we are live on the site right now, we're electrifying a whole village in a country called Lesotho, which is actually one of the poorest countries in Africa. And the village is made up of 800 people, 200 homes, 2 schools, 6 businesses, and they don't have any electricity at all. A bank would never lend them money. Who would invest in a community with sorry, there's a motorbike outside. Who would invest in a village where no one has a bank account? But actually, we can rely on them, and they're human, and everyone knows that once you get electricity, you use it because you can do stuff with it. Sorry, I'm getting really distracted by that motorbike. They're really annoying, aren't they?
That's all right. We can go
and so what we do is we can then offer this project to the world and say, look, world, there's this village. They don't have electricity, but they've got money because they're spending it all on kerosene and candles. So they obviously have money, and they're growing crops, and they go to the town and they get hard currency. Should we electrify the village and enable them to charge their mobile phones and have electric lights at night times so the children can learn properly? And the world can go, yeah, sure. Yeah, I've got some Bitcoin. I've made a lot of profit. Why not convert some of it into solar energy cells and get an income from it? But if we took that project to a bank, they'd be like, no chance. It doesn't meet our risk criteria. We're not doing that. So actually, these kind of projects, it has to be democratized for these kind of projects to happen. And actually, these projects are what is going to make Africa. I mean, it's what the future of Africa relies on, this kind of decentralized system, decentralized energy, decentralized money. Existing structures are not interested. Africa's too much at risk. The numbers are too low. You might as well go and invest in China or India rather than some of the places in Africa, because there's like one single territory to access 1 million people. As 1 billion people in Africa and India, but Africa is such a diverse country, so many different jurisdictions and risks that most international funders are not interested. And that's where companies like us come in, because we can enable getting money directly to projects where it's needed.
So what's the timeline look like on that? So once you find a community, from the time of finding a community to doing a crowd sale to raise the money for it and having the solar panels in place, what kind of timeline are we looking at with that?
Yeah, so I mean, the project that we finished a couple of months ago was for the Centre for the Wildlife, Centre for Rescue Rehabilitation of Wildlife in Durban, a city called Durban. They brought the project to us in a couple of weeks. We'd vetted it, and it was on our platform. It then took about 25 days to raise the funds for it, and then it was installed a couple of weeks later. So within 2 months, it went from, they didn't have any idea they're going to have solar panels to now being solar powered in a case of 2 months, and people then receiving income. But that was a fairly small project. That was around $30,000 project. But the current one we're doing for this village, to solar power this village, that's a $300,000 project, so 10 times the size. We haven't actually hard launched it yet because I'm still working with some of the finer details. But it's such a much bigger project. It's going to take probably 6 months from us raising the funds to it being operational, because you've actually got to build infrastructure. We're putting up pylons and cabling, and we've got to fit each house with a distribution board. So it's a much bigger project. But at the end of the day, the social impact is so much greater. And actually the income potential is greater as well, because the value of the electricity has a premium on it because you're selling electricity in a rural area. So we're competing against diesel fuel and kerosene compared to what would be a utility grid. So if we're selling electricity to a factory in Cape Town, the price would have to be lower. But the ability to pay is important in these villages. But the price for a household to fuel their house on kerosene and candles is so much insanely more expensive than buying electricity. So we can still make money, and the village could still save money, and it's just a total win-win. The thing that's enabled all this is blockchain and Bitcoin, because we can get the payments around the world very cheaply, and in very, very small pieces. It would be impossible doing it any other way. Yeah,
that's great. So one thing that keeps sending off flags in my head, being a tech guy, I'm used to really, really fast-paced things, and you keep saying this hardware lasts for 20 years, or is that the life of the hardware itself, the solar panels?
Yeah. So I mean, everything in a solar plant is completely solid state. It's a silicon chip in a metal frame with a piece of glass on top of it. Everything's built to be built outdoors. I mean, everything's very heavily duty tested. They fire ball bearings and stuff at them to make sure that if there's a hailstorm, that they're going to survive. And all the electrical hardware is all solid state. It's just it's an inverter and some cables and some transformers, and it's very little is there to go wrong. But the equipment is so tried and tested. And this stuff has now been in development for 20 years, probably around there, and it's been German engineered. This stuff is solid and built to last. So we know we can put it out in a field, and it's under 10-year warranties. Like all the equipment is under warranty. So if there is a component failure, the manufacturers have got an obligation to replace it. The solar panels themselves have a 25-year power guarantee. Now, they actually guarantee the power output for a period of 25 years. The reason why we have a 20-year lease is so at the end of the lease period, we're not handing over a system that's out of warranty. There's still warranty remaining.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So for people that may not have money right now to put into it, but they see what you're doing, they see how great it is, and they want to help out, what are some ways people can help out and spread the word about this?
Yeah, I mean, just on our Facebook page, we've got plenty. Just like us and follow us on there. Maybe put a post out on Facebook or social media telling people about us. We do completely rely on awareness. We're only going to grow and become to achieve what we want to do if people know that we exist. So registering on our website, sure, sign up. Just takes a few seconds, then at least you'll then be getting updated via email. We don't bombard people with emails. We just send people maybe a quarterly update on the projects that we're doing and other stuff that we're getting up to, like technological development and stuff. And just follow us on Facebook and like stuff that we do and share it, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together. We're a crowdfunding company. We started on crowdfunding, but we believe that we're not alone in the world, that actually we see a better world, and we think there are many people around the world that see that as well. And we've got technology to make the world better, and our platform brings those people together.